Africa need to use your own brain power to make up your own judgment. In the world of today, you hear a lot of talks about whether, Africa should be forced to make a choice between China versus the United States. But if the United States is doing the wrong thing, why should you bother about working with the United States or following its leadership?
The man you just heard talking, his name is Victor Gao, and he is a top official for the Chinese government. He is the kind of person that is rolled out because he speaks really good English. He communicates really well on the behalf of the Chinese government. In this video, we're going to analyze the full video. And I think there's something really interesting about the way that he talks about the United States. If you're interested in understanding the way that China thinks about the continent of Africa, this is a great video for you to watch. I also want to thank you very much for choosing to click on this video today. If you don't know me, my name is TJ. I'm Nigerian and British mixed. And on this channel, we talk about African geopolitics.
Africa need to use your own brain power to make up your own judgment. In the world of today, you hear a lot of talks about whether, Africa should be forced to make a choice between China versus the United States. I think that's the wrong choice. The real choice for Africa, as well as for the rest of mankind, is whether the United States is doing the right thing or is doing the wrong thing, or whether China is doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing. If the United States is doing the right thing, work with the United States. But if the United States is doing the wrong thing, why should you bother about working with the United States or following its leadership? Similarly, if China is doing the right thing, why don't you want to work with China? And, God forbid, if China is doing the wrong thing, why should you work with China? That means African countries, people in Africa, need to use your own brain power to make a decision first, whether this country or that country is doing the right thing or the wrong thing. Don't be forced by any other country to make a choice which will not serve your fundamental interest. Now, when I traveled a little bit in Rwanda yesterday, in Kigali, let me tell you my real observation. I think Kigali is in better shape today compared with China back in 1978, when China started to reform and opening to the outside world, attracting FDI into China. The philosophical point I want to emphasize is that if China can do this in 46 years, Rwanda and Africa can do it in the coming 4 decades or so. Have faith in yourself. Keep faith in yourself. China is a success story which can be repeated by the great people here in Rwanda and the great people here in Africa. Now, another piece of advice. What is the foundation upon which security should be based, not only for Rwanda but for Africa? Security never exists in a vacuum. Security should be based on several things, which are the pillars. One is maintain stability at home. The other one is keep peace with your neighbors. And the third one, as Deng Xiaoping, for whom I had the great honor to work with before, development is the hard truth. Develop, develop, develop. Power. I understand, even in this great country of Rwanda, you may not have sufficient amount of power. Focus on that. Get that done. That will provide a much better context, whereby security for Rwanda, security for Africa as a continent will be better reinforced. Thank you.
Sometimes the most powerful speech is not the loudest speech. And in this case, I think it's very interesting the way he poses the proposition. If America is not doing the right thing, don't work with them. But if they're doing the right thing, then by all means. And if China is doing the right thing, work with them. But if they are not, then do not work with them. You see, only someone that is confident in the interests of their country would say something like that. And when you juxtapose this against what the United States always say, everything is framed pointing at China to say that China is your enemy. China is the people that you need to fear. China want to take over. China want to dominate you militarily. But when you look at the facts on the ground, China is doing amazing development all over the continent of Africa. They're spending their money all over the continent of Africa. They do not have military bases all over the continent of Africa. They do not have historical, colonial, and neo-colonial behaviors in the continent of Africa. And maybe you could argue that some of their practices is neo-colonial, but it's nothing like what the United States and the West does. China do not push any ideology with the business deals that they make. Whereas you see that happening with the West and United States. They're always outraged at Africa's position on this or that doesn't align with Western values. Well, China knows that Africa is not a Western place. Why would it have the same Western values? The interesting thing about this speech is that he made it whilst being in Africa. China makes it their point to send their foreign minister and many officials, even business leaders, to the continent of Africa. They visit many countries. They also have a massive summit that they do every few years, where they alternate between having the summit in Africa and China. Essentially, they show respect as partners, underlined by a few weeks ago, them abolishing all tariffs for imports from Africa for 53 of the 54 African nations. This in the wake of Donald Trump adding tariffs to all of the African nations. He also highlights how the development curve can follow the development curve of China. 40 years ago, China was really a poor place. And it's amazing that sometimes I hear the West still talk about China as if they are like this still. But China is making great advancements. They're taking over the car industry, the robotics industry, and they are at least neck and neck in the AI race right now. Not to mention they control many of the world's major resources. Supply chains for most of the US military's major weapons can be traced back to China. They have a mining operation which they have sent to the moon in order to bring back more rare earths, which they think is on the surface. They are leaders in quantum computing. They are leaders in the processing of copper. They are leaders in renewable energy, something ideologically the West seem to want to always preach to the developing world. China has made great strides to be the #1 producer of batteries and solar panels. They are working all over the continent of Africa to build things like hydroelectric dams and other renewable energy solutions. At what point is America going to stop being tone deaf and talk about the relationship with Africa, China in a realistic manner? At what point are they going to change their behaviors and treat Africa as partners? If they maintain this negative posture, what they're going to find is Africa is going to develop just like China did, and they will not have any positive strategic partnerships on the continent. Remember, the demographics of the continent of Africa is exploding, and Africa is going to make up 1/3 of the global population in the coming decades. The last point that he made is also very significant. He said, we need security, and that starts with security at home. He's right. Africa needs stable leadership, and in my opinion, it needs unified leadership, which is the other point he touched upon then. He said that we cannot afford to be fighting amongst each other. Right now we have conflict, Somalia, Ethiopia, Sudan. We have the DRC Congo border issue. Now, of course, a big part of that is the meddling and the neo-colonial practices of the Western nations. But if Africa was to unite and look at the bigger picture and see each nation as brethren, we would not give any outside forces the opportunity to come meddling with us, setting tribe against tribe, brother against brother. We have to stop falling for this old divide and conquer trope. He's talking about building the foundations of success through stable energy, manufacturing, and developing. We should have laser focus on this. This is what is going to bring wealth to the continent of Africa. It will make us vertically integrated, meaning we would own supply chains, resource all the way to end product. What if we could do that? What if we could do that so that the best products in the world have the same reputation as what they do in Germany? In China, it used to be that China makes poor, crappy stuff, but actually China is now getting a reputation for making very high-end, high-quality stuff. So Africa can do the same. Build what you can build. Make your manufacturing more robust. You're not going to make the best products in the world overnight. But if you have this focus, eventually we will get there. We can provide alternatives to the manufacturing bases of the other regions of Asia as well as China itself. When you can source the resources locally and then make a product out of it, it takes away all of that big international logistics. It takes away taxes in the supply chain. There really is an opportunity for there to be growth and development with this type of advantage. And there are positive signs that this is happening. We've seen Dangote Refinery doing this in the oil sector. The president of Botswana has been talking about this. The president of Uganda has been talking about this. Namibia, Angola, and Zambia have been talking about this. We obviously see what's happening in the Sahel states with Ibrahim Traore. So the African countries that are pioneering this need to really step forward so that we can show up the countries that still have these puppet leaders, these leaders that do not work in the best interest of the African continent. It will be inevitable that rebellions will happen, and that, quite frankly, is what we need. Some of these countries have leaders that have run their infrastructure and have run their manufacturing and have run everything about the country into the ground. What will happen if a neighboring country suddenly starts developing, having great outcomes, while a whole population is suffering? That population has to rise up and demand better of its leaders. It will be a difficult road. It will be a challenge for sure, but it must be done. It is imperative if we want our grandkids, our great-grandkids, and our future descendants to have the best possible life on the continent of Africa. Everyone talks about the potential of Africa, but now it's time for us to do the hard work to get it to where it needs to be. I would love to know your thoughts about all of this. Please leave it in the comments section. But if you have nothing to say, would it be too much for me to ask you to write the words "Africa must focus" in the comments section? It just lets me know that you watched the video to the end, you like what I'm doing, you support the channel, and you want me to continue. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.